Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's program. Because, hey, it's Friday. You know what that means. We have the one, the only, the magnanimous, yes, Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here in just a moment. It was a little touch and go there with the weather. And ladies and gentlemen out there, I hope all of you are dealing with the wild weather as well. I saw that, the vast majority of like 23 states are having to deal with like winter warnings. It's, very, very strange, and, just here in the mountains of, North Carolina where we, record from, it's, it was like 76, 77 the other day in February. It's wild, man, wild. But everyone, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's program because we have a number of stories, everything from autonomous fighter jets. Yes, you may own one soon. No, you're not going to own one of those, but autonomous fighter jets, what to do with those pesky cardboard boxes, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, Ralph finds a number of stories as our science and technology trends correspondent. So much falls into his purview, and they're always a lot of fun. So stick around for that. ComputerAmerica.com, that's the only thing you really need to know about because that will have all of the show links, of course, a link to Ralph's website, and it will have all of the stories and more. You can see that there with, there at ComputerAmerica.com. Also, contest giveaways and more news, everything that we do, including reviews, podcasts, articles, all that and more, ComputerAmerica.com. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and, let's just bring Ralph on and for longtime listeners, he's no stranger, but of course he is our science and technology trends correspondent and a longtime contributor to Computer America. And Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
It's great to be back. Just in time delivery because my dog started to bark out the front window of my office here where I do the show. And I had to close the blinds because when the kids start going to school or people start going up and down the street, he goes nuts. So that's okay. Dive to the window, but I'm back.
You're good. Didn't even notice that. And ladies and gentlemen, I think for everyone out there, Ralph, let's go ahead and introduce the nice folks to what we try to do on our segment.
Absolutely. This is so much fun every Friday. And right off the top, Ben and I always like to tell you, if you're coming here today, this morning with us, to be in a downer, to hear horrible, disparaging news. Wrong. We do uplifting, positive science and technology stories that a lot of times are about what's coming in the future and positive. So basically, I'm an aggregator of science and tech news features. I pick up monitoring a bunch of services, and I look for stories that don't usually get mainstream press attention because, of course, the news cycle is so dominated by Ukraine and many other things like that, and rightly so. And I'm always on the lookout for news that gives a glimpse into where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. And what Ben and I do with each of these news items is present the essential points in a digestible form. And I stress to the audience, please come out to ComputerAmerica.com and get today's, we call them show notes, because they have links. It has the script, if you want to call it that, of our presentation, our distillation of these stories. But most important, it has the links, and you can go dive deeper if you want to. So again, we're here to end your week with an upbeat note and get into some fun science and tech news.
Absolutely. And I think you've done that. I had a chance to kind of look over the stories beforehand and especially story number 4 for anyone out there who really enjoys needles. That's going to be a good one for you. Those dedicated few. But Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and start with story number one. And if you're like me, and I'm sure Ralph as well, and just everyone, I mean, especially post pandemic, and everyone kind of got in the habit of having everything delivered to the house. And let's face it, it's not just trash night anymore. It's trash and cardboard night. Like, it's tearing down boxes, stacking them up, putting them in the recycling, so on and so forth. It's become a real chore, and finding a place to kind of squirrel away, knock down cardboard boxes, I think we can all commiserate. So maybe in the walls. Who knows? Yeah.
This is a good one. The headline here is New Technology Advances the Use of Waste Cardboard for Home Insulation. And on the surface of this, you might think, well, okay, how groovy, scientific, advanced cardboard, okay, just grind it up and shove it in the walls. No, there's more to it. You're going to find out. And that's why I love this story. Got this from techcrunch.com, and we'll get into a setup here to set the stage. According to the EPA, cardboard boxes account for approximately anywhere from 33 to 51 million tons of waste annually in the United States. Now, of course, most of that gets recycled. That's great. But there's still a significant fraction that finds its way into landfills, and that's not good. So there's one startup, a Buffalo, New York-based outfit called Clean Fiber, run those two words together, is now using an innovative process that turns the cardboard box waste into cellulose insulation that can be blown into walls and attics of new and existing homes. Now, typically, and this was interesting, I didn't really catch on to this or know this, typically cellulose insulation for homes and buildings and so forth is made by shredding old newspapers. But with the decline of the newspaper industry over the past 20 years, the supply of newsprint available for this purpose has dropped dramatically. So now what? What do? Well, turns out cardboard is a great alternative. It's lighter and stronger than newspaper. The lighter part surprises me, but lighter and stronger than newspaper, and contains more fiber and less clay. I never think about clay in newspaper, but anyway, or in paper for that matter. All right. So far you've been patient, thinking, hey, this sounds kind of low tech. Aren't they just going to grind up the cardboard and shove it in the walls? No, there is a high tech side to this story. And this I had no idea about. It makes me scared of all the Amazon boxes out in my garage right now, ready to be cut down and put in the bin. But anyway, cardboard contains some nasty contaminants, including heavy metals. What? Such as zinc, lead, cadmium, and chromium. I had no idea. I don't know why.
I wonder where in the process it gets in there.
Yeah, you're right. Preservative, or maybe something to make the cardboard more
maybe
rigid,
like the adhesive. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, what? I mean, we need a cardboard geek to tell us where that's coming from. But be that as it may, Clean Fiber's research efforts, here comes the science, their research efforts backed by the National Science Foundation and conducted with the University of Maine. And I'll stop for a second. The University of Maine is doing some pretty interesting stuff in insulation. There was a big story actually nationally covered on a lot of the regular mainstream news media about a home in Maine that has no heating and no whatever, because the insulation is so fantastic. This house in the middle of winter can be 70 degrees inside with no extra effort, if you want to call it that. No central heating. Isn't that something? But I digress. So again, Clean Fiber's research efforts, backed by the National Science Foundation and conducted by the University of Maine, led to the development of an innovative wet separation and infusion manufacturing process that removes these contaminants by floating them off. Now, I dug around, tried to find a little bit more about this, but it is a proprietary technique, so they're not exactly spelling out the whole recipe, but they've come up with this way of removing the lead, zinc, cadmium, chromium, and all the nasty heavy metals from cardboard so that this shredded up cardboard material can be safe. And on the theme of safety for last, they add all borate liquid fire retardant is infused directly into these cardboard-derived insulation fibers after they've been cleared of the heavy metal contaminants. So you wind up with a really nice, safe-to-use insulation material that's going to help recycle these cardboard boxes. And again, the joke is Amazon should invest in this company because they're going to be contributing a lot of the input.
Yeah. And I have, even when you don't order things from Amazon directly, let's say, eBay or whatever you may be ordering from,
right.
It usually comes in a repurposed Amazon box that I've noticed.
Yes.
It seems like Amazon's like really the only, player in that market anymore. But Ralph, the one thing I can really determine, and this is like a paper that, or I should say research paper, I can't really dive into here on the show, but all I can say is the effects of colorants on the content of heavy metals in recycled corrugated board papers. What sounds like, Ralph, is either through the dyeing process to turn, to turn the ink and the cardboard different colors, but also I think somewhere in the recycling process, you also introduce some of these heavy metals as well to, kind of change the chemistry of the cardboard to, be more malleable. So mainly it seems like the heavy metals come from recycled cardboard, which is good, but it still introduces those heavy metals, which I had no idea about. So
me too.
Very, very strange, but the fact that you can turn it into potentially, insulation for houses, there's, I'm glad people are thinking of ways to use this stuff, Ralph, because it's everywhere. It's crazy how popular cardboard is.
Yes, it is. And again, think about this. It's not just new construction, Ben. There's a lot of people, especially in our efforts to try to reduce our consumption of, say, natural gas for heating or whatever you're doing, blowing more insulation into their attics, right?
Yeah.
So you may have an existing home, but you're going back in there and doubling up on your insulation to reduce your heating costs.
Yeah, we had that done in an old house, probably about 10 years ago. And they come with a big truck and a big hose, and they just spray it all. They just pump the attic full of it, and it already looks like mulched up. Kind of cardboard's brown. It's has these fibers. Anything better than that fiberglass insulation, because that stuff was very dangerous to work with, especially over a long period of time. So this is cool stuff, and if it's even more affordable, can get into more homes, even better. And by the way, their website, a bit of a treat, Clean Fiber, because I don't know what it is, but they are really about dogs. Yeah, they're really about dogs. So
I know, it's hilarious. They've got a real sense of humor and a real thing for their dogs. I'm assuming these dogs are the employees' dogs, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, they have a few references to being the underdog and stuff like that. But either way, it was very cute. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, we'll have a link in the show notes to it. So that's story number 1. You can go ahead and check that out there. Story number 2. And this is exciting because we've seen, I guess I should say long-term listeners will know that Ralph's really been keeping in touch with the hydrogen fuel cells and hydrogen-fueled vehicles. I know on the show we've covered tractors that can do it. We've covered buses that can do it. Airplanes are looking to retrofit as well. But story number 2 is an exciting trend that we haven't talked much about. So story number 2.
Yeah, in fact, a lead into story number 2, referencing some past stories you and I've done. Some number of months ago, I don't know how long ago it was, we talked about Toyota and their big effort to create these hydrogen fuel cell canisters or tubular-like things. That their idea is you pull into a refueling station at some point in the future, you simply pull out the canister, if you want to call it that, from your side of your car and pop in a fresh one and take off in minutes, right?
Yeah. Anyway, those, if I recall, kind of look kind of like, think like large Dyson vacuums, but just like the canister part. And you could just kind of pop them out and pop them back in.
Pop them in. Yeah. So there's real interest in this, and that will play a role in this story. So here's the headline. Key trend to watch here, folks. More than 56,000 hydrogen cars sold worldwide. And we're going to find out what's the context for this. I got this from AutoTech.news. This is a cool website. I recently kind of got onto these guys, and it's pretty cool. All right. So before we go on, for general listeners who might not be fully aware of what's going on with hydrogen cars and so forth, quick reminder, from a global warming perspective, cars powered by hydrogen fuel are great, as they only emit water vapor and warm air as exhaust. So that's why people are so keen on them. But we're going to find out there's barriers and mountains to climb to make this all happen. But we'll get into that in a bit. So it's encouraging to hear that as of the end of last year, more than 56,000 hydrogen fuel cell passenger vehicles have been sold worldwide, according to a recently released information trend study called Global Market for Hydrogen Fuel Cell Vehicles 2023. So it's talking about where we reached at the end of last calendar year and talking about where we're going in the future. Now, right off the top, I'm sure many of the listeners and viewers are going, 56,000, come on. We know it's a minuscule fraction of the millions of gas, hybrid, and EV vehicles sold each year, but it's definitely a positive trend forward to monitor and watch.
Know that, and I just have to say that to know that number is more than just 0 or maybe 1 or 2,000 for like a test fleet of vehicles and like a very confined like campus or something like that. Ralph, the fact that it's more than 0 is really astonishing, because this was a technology that researchers were playing in the lab with, and they were like, how can we get this to the masses? 56,000 is a huge, more than I would have thought, for sure.
Well, yeah. And you know what, Ben, it also, you and I talked so many stories about testing, and let's take medical testing when they have a body of 600 volunteer patients to test on. That's so significant because that number is meaningful in terms of drawing conclusions and projecting ideas going forward. So to your point, I love that, 56,000 vehicles now out there, hydrogen based, gives the scientific, the engineering community a really viable base, so they can find how are they performing in weather conditions, how are they performing on different road situations, how are they holding up, blah, 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 blah. What's the maintenance issues, and so on and so forth. So this is another aspect of this that's so significant beyond just saying, hey, 56,000 have been sold so far. So going on, it's of course predicted that sales of hydrogen vehicles will increase significantly once hydrogen fuel station deployments ramp up and the whole infrastructure of getting hydrogen out there that you and I have talked about before. And this is a key barrier often cited. For example, a Forbes article, and I've got the link embedded in the show notes if you're interested, on this subject noted, quote, "Of course, one of the biggest challenges will be creating a robust infrastructure with enough hydrogen fueling stations to keep vehicles running around the clock. However, the benefits far outweigh the difficulties, and we expect to see widespread global expansion of hydrogen stations in the coming decade." And time out for a second here. We have a big Costco near where we live, only like 2 or 3 miles away. And of course, it has a big gasoline fueling station as part of the compound there. And you and I have talked about this before. In fact, I think we talked about it when we covered the Toyota story we mentioned a moment ago, in that I don't think it's a question of suddenly having to build new fueling stations. It's just saying, oh, go over to aisle 6. That's the hydrogen line, right? I mean, why? I think that's got to be the strategy. And the oil companies and the gasoline companies and so forth, your Chevrons, whoever, should see an opportunity here and say, hey, maybe we could take one lane of our 6-lane thing and dedicate it to hydrogen someday in the future, right? That's where I think the answer is. And I think those cartridges that Toyota has in mind is also part of the solution too.
Yeah. And and we heard the same argument when it came to electric vehicles. And all it really took was for Tesla to come out with superchargers, and just a supercharging station, 3 or 4 in every state from East Coast to West Coast. And Ralph, it really improved the viability of having an electric car and be able to go long distances, not just, stick within 100 miles of your home. No, you could definitely go places. And, back in 2010, 2010 and before, they're like, electric vehicles, they're 20, 30, 40 years away. You have to build up the infrastructure. It's not there. It's not there. Today, I would say that, especially, maybe I'm sheltered and just, the people that I know, people look at electric vehicles and they're like, yeah, I'd really like to own one. Of course, the cost is the cost, but still, people want electric vehicles because they know they can take them anywhere and they're so darn good. So to say that the infrastructure is the key holdback, that can change, and that can change very quickly.
Yeah. And the other thing that you and I have talked about, and again, I think it came up with the Toyota story many months ago, is the transportation of the hydrogen fuel itself to wherever it's going to be processed, maybe into these canisters that Toyota wants to do. I think if I recall right, it has to be kept at a very low temperature. So there's issues there's mechanical infrastructure issues. We're not going to downplay that. But again, as the Forbes article said, the ultimate benefits so outweigh these obstacles that if we put our minds to it, we can make this happen. And so going back to the story, though, here, according to the Information Trends report, more than half of the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles sold so far have been in Korea. So if you want to know where it's happening, it's Korea, because it has the most extensive hydrogen fueling infrastructure of any market. Isn't that something? Good for them. Other regions, and of course, they're talking about South Korea, not North Korea. And North Korea, they're probably using nuclear fusion.
They're just breaking through the coal barrier. Yes.
Oh my God. Anyway, now here's another thing that's interesting. Other regions with growing sales of hydrogen fuel cell vehicles include Japan. That's no surprise. Again, think of Toyota and other companies there. So Japan, Europe, and California, where the the deployment of hydrogen stations is progressing. So nobody's going to try to tell you this is happening right away in mass form, but the inklings of a really significant beginning are in front of us. And I think that's so cool. And it says here, according to the report, except for California, the United States has been dragging its feet in implementing this technology, particularly because of lack of action at the federal level. Now, I'm not quite sure what the federal government's supposed to do, maybe encourage research or get laws in place. I don't know. Maybe you've got an idea of what they're referring to.
Yeah, probably a lot to do with subsidies. And the government and federal money definitely drives innovation, Ralphie. If, all the grants to universities that let them, research about robotics, all the fuel or all the money that goes into researching solar panels and so on and so forth, federal money just kind of entices private industry to jump into the field more. So if there's no interest by the federal government to kind of subsidize this in any manner, then private companies aren't going to jump into this. They're going to go where there's already subsidies and tax breaks and whatnot. But glad to hear California, because California really does drive the rest of the country when it comes to kind of innovation and change on that field. And one thing that I would hope for a lot of people to kind of keep an eye on, it's not so much your next car is going to be hydrogen fuel powered, but maybe your next city bus or your next large construction equipment, larger vehicles that maybe having these giant batteries is not that is not really that practical, but having canisters or ways to kind of swap the fuel or recharge these things that are much larger than an average car, Ralph, that's where I'm hoping to see a lot of new hydrogen vehicles.
You are absolutely correct, Ben. In fact, some of the tangential research I did around this story said that exact same thing. It said, passenger cars, that's very much for the future. But nearer term, they say, look at the industries where this could really hit home. Freight trucks, okay? And buses and larger vehicles, where you could really see a very powerful financial incentive to convert over to this and drive that infrastructure. So you have a trucking company or something, they might be able to have their own fueling stations, right?
I want to say that just about 2 months ago, we talked about planes actually having, maybe not be the sole fuel of the plane, but having at least part of the fuel be hydrogen fuel cell as well. So,
so you could have
possibilities abound. But of course, speaking of planes, actually, why don't we go ahead and jump over to story number 3? Because story number 3, and this was actually, pretty big news because, Ralph, not to bring everyone down, we would never want to do that, but a topic of conversation, obviously, with what's happening in Ukraine and, new battlefronts opening up, the idea of autonomous weapons and things that don't have a person behind them, and letting a computer determine, is this thing a threat, should it be destroyed, and when that thing is not just infrastructure or buildings or whatnot, but actually people, I don't know if humans are ever going to be really comfortable with no human intervention in those situations. Now, of course, I want to say about a year or two ago, they had a test flight with a plane, a fighter jet that was completely AI, kind of done. It looks like that system, and of course all the conversations that come around this topic, has been kind of upgraded and now is actually in use. So let's talk about story number 3. I'm sorry for the rambling intro, but yeah.
Oh no, that's perfect. And the headline here is "World's First Autonomous Artificial Intelligence Jet Fighter Training Aircraft." Now, I want to stress the word training. Okay. That's the purpose of this vehicle we're going to talk about. And I got this from newatlas.com, another cool website. We've got some videos here you can play and show folks if you want. So this month, Lockheed Martin announced that their fighter jet trainer for the U.S. Air Force, called the Vista X-62A, they're saying is the world's first tactical aircraft to be autonomously controlled by artificial intelligence. So there you go. There's nobody sitting in that cockpit, right?
It's spooky.
And, it's military oriented, so I guess you could say it's kind of a downer. I don't know. But the AI part of it's pretty cool, because maybe this technology can go into civilian peaceful purposes too. So, okay, with that. So and again, for general audience participants who might not be fully tuned into this, just a real quick, before we dive into this, simply put, what is artificial intelligence? We throw this around so much, and every once in a while I realize some people may not be fully comfortable. A super simplified definition: it's all about computer systems able to perform tasks such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. Just an example. Developed by Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. I'd love to know why it's called Skunk. Anyway, that's been around for decades and decades, I think. Yeah. Anyway, developed by Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works, classified research facility in cooperation with Calspan Corporation, the Variable In-Flight Simulation Test Aircraft. That's where you get the acronym VISTA. Okay, Variable In-Flight Simulation Test Aircraft. The Vista X-62A, it's a modified F-16D, if the aircraft looks familiar to you. Now, it flew unmanned for more than 17 hours during recent test flights at the Edwards Air Force Base in California in December. So just a month or so ago. And the artificial intelligence agents, in quotes, piloted the X-62A Vista to perform advanced fighter maneuvers mimicking flight characteristics of a standard F-16. But there's more to it than just making the F-16 do its thing, right? Here's why this AI-driven aircraft is so important. And this I thought was so good in the article that I read. Today's air forces, not just ours, but across the globe, are much smaller than they were in the past due to the astronomical costs of first making and then maintaining jet fighters. So it's hard to free up enough of these jets for training purposes. Wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And on top of that, there's the challenge of training pilots to fly more than one specific model of fighter aircraft. I have to digress for a moment. My Xfinity service had a freebie to see Tom Cruise's latest Top Gun movie, right?
Yes.
So I watched it the other night. And of course, being the super pilot he is, he can jump into pretty much any jet and instantly knows what to do. But let's get real, okay?
Yeah.
That's not reality.
They don't really like that. No, they like their pilots to have a few thousand hours of flight time. Yeah.
Yes. So again, the challenge of training pilots to fly more than one specific model of fighter aircraft. That's the challenge. So the availability of planes for training and having pilots that can do more than just one plane. Those are two things. Keep that in mind. So with the development of the artificial intelligence-driven Vista X-62A, the Air Force now has a tool to address both challenges. Because Lockheed Martin's fighter jet training aircraft uses a programmable artificial intelligence, this one plane can mimic the characteristics of various U.S. Air Force aircraft. Wow, that's like a light bulb ding in my head going off. In fact, it's now being used at the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base to train pilots to handle multiple aircraft. So important. I mean, this is really talk about money saving in the end, right? If you can take this aircraft and have one pilot learn to fly multiple aircraft, you get more bang for your buck, so to speak, from our military dollars. Now, that's one thing. So far we've been talking about training human beings, flying different aircraft, using this plane that, because of AI, can mimic characteristics of multiple aircraft. But there's another part of the story that you know is coming, right? In addition to helping train pilots, the Vista X-62A will contribute to the development and testing of cutting-edge AI techniques for future unmanned aircraft designs. So it's a parallel path here. It's one to train today's human pilots, and the other to give us more knowledge and technology insights to develop, I'll call them super drones, right? Jet aircraft that are much more sophisticated than the drones that we're seeing today. And to dive deeper, I encourage you, and I put a link into the show notes, to go and read Lockheed Martin's press release about this. You can get much more in depth into the technology if you want to go down that road. But a very interesting story to me on multiple levels.
Yeah, and just according to Google, and I know people get really, really into kind of counting this kind of thing, but I was kind of curious how many, how many planes are there? Because I never really considered that, Ralph. Like, obviously you see old World War II documentaries, and of course everything with Vietnam, and just in the past it was like build as many planes as you could, and that's how many you had. It was kind of your production capabilities. Now, right. I guess it's more of how many do you need, and of course one modern fighter jet is probably worth dozens of kind of an old school fighter jet. So it from what I can kind of see, and this is just the Air Force. Obviously, the Navy is going to have more of their own, but the Air Force has about 1,500 jets, fighter jets. So. That's where that article, kind of struck me, was freeing them up to let people train in them. And no wonder it makes the news, Ralph. There was one about 2 years ago where some military crashed a jet out there in Nevada, or, they were training out there in the desert, and they unfortunately lost a fighter jet or two. Ralph, if the U.S. has maybe, let's just say 3,000, if the Navy has, if the Air Force has 1,500, let's just say 3,000 for the entire armed forces, man, losing one or two to training accidents, that starts to really add up. That's not good. So this story, I like it a lot on a lot of fronts. I like it more than, kind of what I was leading with was, having fighter jets be completely unmanned, no trained pilots in them whatsoever. This is, I feel like, the proper use of AI and, artificial intelligence in training purposes. This makes so much sense.
It does. Yeah.
It also kind of struck me off. I'm like, if you can have an AI system, and obviously you're going to have an instructor in there, you're going to, be training in so many different ways other than this one system. But Ralph, I'm maybe kind of think about AI teachers, not saying that teachers will ever be replaced, having, kind of the human, having the human element to a teacher is so important. But, there's a huge teacher shortage there. We don't pay teachers enough, unfortunately, in this country, and it's a thankless job, and there's a huge teacher shortage. I'm curious, Rob, how much longer until AI starts to come for, maybe just teaching assistant jobs, maybe not teaching jobs, but teaching assistant jobs and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. And going back to the aircraft industry, as I read through this story and started letting it sink in, think about commercial airline companies here in the Northwest. I'm in the Portland, Oregon area, as you know. Alaska Airlines is a really big deal for us. And what if Alaska Airlines had an aircraft, one of their passenger aircraft, with this kind of AI training technology built in, so that one pilot could be trained to fly? Because Alaska Airlines has something like 5 or 6 different planes that's in their fleet models, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And what if you could train a pilot to be more than, be able to deal with 3 of those 5 or something like that? You could really extend the usefulness of the pilot in question, and also might help recruitment, might help with training, and so forth and so on. So this has a peaceful, if you want to call it that, commercial possibility, this story, this technology that they're using first in this Air Force training playing.
Right.
So it's kind of cool.
There's definitely a lot of need for, kind of expensive training equipment, and something like that makes all the sense in the world. So very, very cool story. And Lockheed Martin always doing very incredible things.
Yeah.
So that was story number 3. Story number 4, our last story of the day. Let's take a little bit more down to earth. And this is one where, sometimes when we talk medicine, we talk about new ways to eradicate, diseases that couldn't be done. We talk about ways to, maybe perform surgeries out in the field to, kind of keep organs alive for longer. Ralph, there's a lot of technology that goes into keeping our fragile little human bodies going. Well, story number 4, completely off the wall. Never heard anything like it. Microneedle bandages.
Yes, this is a good one. Headline here: new microneedle bandage can stop bleeding in less than 2 minutes. So if you're an ER person, you're a paramedic, a first responder, you name it, this story is for you. And even for parents of toddlers or grandparents of toddlers, this story is for you, because dealing with little wounds is a big deal for around our house these days with our grandkids. Anyway, I digress. This comes from SciTechDaily.com. A really kind of fun story. Secondary. And first of all, here's a statistic in the article. I didn't know this, and it's kind of amazing. Secondary uncontrolled bleeding resulting from traumatic injuries is the leading cause of death for Americans from age 1 to 46. Wow. Okay. So to help reduce these tragic fatalities, and I'm not going to butcher this poor man's name. His first name is Amir. That's easy. But his last name is Sheikhi. Shaiki or Shiki? You're Shiki. Let's go with Shiki.
Yeah, let's go with
Amir
Shiki.
And there's a photo of him in the show notes here. He's an assistant professor of chemical and biomedical engineering at Penn State, has developed an innovative microneedle patch, which can rapidly stop bleeding following a traumatic injury. So his research is focused on, really serious injuries, but its implications can be for much less serious injuries too. So it's not exclusive to major traumatic injuries is what I'm trying to say. Now, a little bit about microneedles, because what the heck are microneedles? Okay. Well, microneedles, which are already in use to deliver biologics, such as cells or drugs through the skin, or for cosmetic procedures to stimulate collagen production, are tiny microneedles. They're tiny, measuring in the millionths of a meter. Let that sink in. Wow. In fact, they're so tiny that applying them to the skin or a wound area is pain-free. And if you do a thing on microneedles, you do a little Google search and stuff and go into the images category, you see mostly the cosmetic. There's like these weird face mask things that are made up of microneedles, and they're injecting collagen and all that's where you're going to see all the pictures, and not so much this medical stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, but I knew nothing. Microneedles, what? So it's kind of fun to learn about that. So here we go. And when it comes to rapidly stopping bleeding, the hemostatic microneedle technology used for the experimental patch with its microneedle arrays. So you have to picture in your mind the patch is filled with these, arrays of these little but tiny, tiny needles. So with its microneedle arrays, these patches have been shown to boost blood clotting to stop bleeding in less than 2 minutes. In fact, in tests, the engineered microneedle arrays reduce clotting time from an average of about 11.5 minutes to 1.3 minutes. Wow. And in a rat liver bleeding model, poor rats, once again, give their lives for us, they reduced bleeding by more than 90%. Okay, so how does this work? Here's how it works. The biocompatible and biodegradable, gotta love that, biocompatible, biodegradable microneedle arrays on the patch increase its surface contact with blood, which accelerates the clotting process. And I'm not a medical scientist, so I'm going to speculate here, but I'm thinking the introduction of a foreign object into a pool of blood, if you have enough of these little guys, there must be something about blood that when it comes into contact with these needles, it's just a natural reaction to clot, I'm guessing. Okay.
Well, I think blood, just wants to clot. That's as soon as it hits oxygen or any other foreign object, like you said, it wants to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. And a good point that I learned as well is that our blood, when it's exposed to the air, immediately starts clotting. What we're talking about here is the microneedles help super boost and accelerate that clotting process. That's the key. Mm-hmm. And going on here, and the mechanical interlocking formation of the needles also increases the adhesive properties of the patch to promote wound closure. Wow. That's really cool. Now, the experimental microneedle patch is also designed for immediate application and is very user-friendly. So far, this is just ding, 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 hitting all the good points, in my opinion. So according to the Penn State researcher, Mr. Amir Shiki, anyone can use the patch to quickly stop bleeding. And he says it's as easy to apply as an over-the-counter adhesive bandage. And again, what a great thing this is for paramedics and grandparents with kids, toddlers, getting hurt. But I'm serious. Think about unending uses for this in the field, for military medics, for paramedics in our streets and cities, and ER room recipients, and being able to slap one of these babies on. And if you look at the cosmetic version of these microneedle patches, you'll see that they can be very thin and very pliable, and they can be very large or small or whatever you need. So I just think this is a clever thing, and salute to this guy at Penn State, and for Penn State getting involved with this kind of research. Good for them.
Yeah, I'd never heard of microneedles before, but definitely finding a lot of the cosmetic stuff. You can imagine that this will be, assuming it works as well as it does, and it doesn't degrade or something like that. I could see this being a part of every first aid kit for trauma or car accidents or as much as we don't want to be a downer here. If there happens to be any kind of shooting in the U.S., who knows? Maybe having these on site would save a lot of lives. In a situation like that. So
and that's a great photo, by the way. A wonderful photo you're showing here, showing how
that
small.
Photo, a nice little 2-for-1 story. So obviously this was to prevent bleeding and blood loss and bandages, and you could do it yourself. Right. This is actually for everyone who's just listening, it's the tip of a researcher's finger, and it's a very, very small little square that shows microneedles, and the resolution is good enough to kind of show the size. It's very, very, very tiny, and it's able to show the little needles. Ralph, this is actually, and this is from a story back in 2018. It's a microneedle. As if people weren't already freaked out by the story, this is a microneedle contact lens. So this would, I know, right? This would actually go into your, into your eye, and it's actually made out of the same stuff that eye drops are made out of. It's just, kind of jelly and solidified. So it will eventually dissipate into your eye. And Ralph, the microneedles are supposed to, they say the patch was 90% more effective at alleviating the condition. And the condition was glaucoma or something like Actually, it was glaucoma. It was 90% more effective in alleviating the condition, and then applying a single eye drop with 10 times more drug content. So you're able to use 1/10 of the drugs, and it is almost 100% more effective using one of these contact lenses. So,
Ben, if you're going to stick this thing on your eye as a testament to this line that we had in the story about how these needles are so tiny, they're pain-free. And so that's the ultimate test, sticking one of those babies on your eye.
Yeah. So, and what they're saying here is that, the repeatedly applying the eye drops and ointments also found the patch was useful, as it was as it has the potential to achieve the same therapeutic effect with a smaller and less frequent dosage. And of course, probably you go into the doctor's office, you kind of get the numbing agent, and maybe the doctor does this for you once a month instead of doing eye drops every single day. Ralph, like I said, that one may make you squirm a little bit in your seat, but still, it shows that microneedles are something that are really up and coming. And I really like the bandage story that you had. That was very, very impressive what he was able to do to stop bleeding. So, Ralph, and actually, ladies and gentlemen out there, if you want to find out more about these stories, Ralph does a great job of distilling them. Hey, there's a lot more to find out there. And also, if you want to find out more about Ralph and his stories, not just on our show, but as well as KX Portland, Oregon, hey, his website is also available. You can check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes. Until next time, Ralph, until next time, everyone, have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay warm. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.